The January 24th, 2023 special meeting of the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors is hereby called to order. Will the secretary please read the roll?
President Singh.
Present?
Vice President Mitchell.
Present.
Director Nichols.
Present.
Director Turner.
Present.
Director Mason.
Present.
Thank you very much. Our first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Saltzman, would you please introduce the agenda for this evening?
Yes, tonight the board will hold an executive session for the board to receive an update from legal counsel regarding litigation. At this time, the special meeting, we recess for approximately 5 minutes to be reconvened in executive session in the Silver Lake Room for approximately 20 minutes. No action may be taken during the executive session. After the executive session, I'd like to reconvene and immediately adjourn the special meeting. This meeting will then be adjourned.
Thank you very
Thank
much, Dr. Saltzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
If all directors are in agreement, the agenda is going to be approved by general consent. Very well. Thank you very much. At this time, we will hold an executive session for the board to receive an update from legal counsel regarding litigation. At this time, the special meeting is recessed for approximately 5 minutes to be reconvened in executive session in the Silver Lake Room for approximately 20 minutes. No action may be taken during the executive session. With that being said, we are now recessed.
I'll text Cedar on that request for information.
I would like to reconvene and immediately adjourn the special meeting. This meeting is now adjourned.
Or adjourn?
Special meeting.